welcome to another episode of the Analytical Innovations Podcast brought to you by Analytical AI. I'm your host, Dr. William Monroe, and today I am excited to get a chance to speak with a voice from the intelligence community, Gina Bennett. So Gina Bennett is a retired CIA counterterrorism analyst, renowned for being the first U.S. government official to identify Osama bin Laden as a threat. And she brought that out in the early 1990s. Currently, she's teaching at Georgetown University, where she's introducing innovative concepts like the hunter-gatherer national security, and serves as a strategy advisor for Girl Security, an organization which empowers young women in national security. Her career also includes authorship of 2 books on national security and appearances in documentaries. She is an ongoing influence in the intelligence community and the security discourse. And I just learned that she has a new book coming out soon, which is historical spy fiction and involves time travel, called Two of Them Are Dead.
If two of them are dead.
If two of them are dead. There we go. Which I'm assuming is a reference to the 2 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Yeah, 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Yeah, that's Benjamin Franklin is credited with that quote.
Yes, yeah. No, fantastic. That sounds really interesting. So I'm gonna have to put it on my Amazon wish list as soon as it comes out, for sure. So just thank you so much, Gina, for your time and coming on today. I think you have a lot of interesting insights and background to talk about, so I'm really, really excited. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and I hope so. We'll see.
Well, I mean, we informally before we started recording, I know we were at least enjoying talking about our kids and things. So it'll be a good conversation regardless. All right, I've got my notes here because I can never keep anything in my brain for long. But I'd love it if you would talk a little bit about your background. How did you get into intelligence?
Yeah, no, it was quite by accident, to be honest with you. It was not where I thought I was going to go, especially when I was in college. I went to the University of Virginia thinking that I would be a neuro researcher. I was really fascinated with how the human brain works. And I didn't want to be a doctor, but I guess I imagined myself with a white coat in a lab, just dissecting brains. I know that sounds crazy, but I just am still very fascinated by the human brain and its evolution. But I have to tell you, chemistry whipped my butt at UVA. And I happened to take a couple of courses both in economics and in foreign affairs. And my professor, Rohala Ramazani, who was a legend in Middle East foreign affairs, was one of my professors. And I just got sucked in pretty quickly and turned my course towards economics and foreign affairs instead. And really, by the time I finished at the university, I wanted to be in Middle East foreign policy in some way. I wasn't really thinking about being a diplomat, mainly because the youngest of 5, my father was in the Navy, and all my older siblings would complain about how they hated moving around the world so much. And I let that influence me. And so I thought, oh, well, I don't want to be in a job where I have to move a lot.
Yeah.
So that was dumb. Never listen to your older siblings. For any of the babies in the family, right? Never listen to the older siblings. But yeah. So really, when I finished at the University of Virginia, Ronald Reagan was still president, and we were dealing with a bit of rocky jobs market. And so I took the first thing I could get. And it happened to be what they called an externship. So it was a paid summer internship.
Okay.
And it was at the Department of State. And I was a clerk typist. So in the whole government schedule, GS schedule, I was a GS4. My salary was $12,400 a year. So it wasn't a lot of money back then, but um, and I really was just alphabetizing. That's it. Like this is
Mm.
nothing exciting. But for me, it was Washington, D.C. It was a foot in the door. It was the opportunity to learn what is out there for someone who's interested in Middle East foreign policy. I quickly learned that the think tank world was not somewhere I could go without a PhD. So um, I was a little surprised by that. And as I said, I wasn't really interested in the foreign service. And it just so happened that the woman who was running the office that I was working in took me aside one day and said, Gina, I just don't think you belong here. You should pursue intelligence. You should pursue an intelligence career. And I really never knew what that was until that moment when I was used to doing what I was told. And so I did. I pursued an intelligence job that was one of those 24-hour operational centers. So they're all over Washington, D.C. in the executive branch. And so I got a job as what they called a terrorism watch officer,
Mm.
um, and on an intelligence center. So we would be watching, we had 8-hour shifts, and we would read incoming information, both news as well as intelligence reporting on events either unfolding or threats or things that we were investigating. And I just I don't know, it's kind of like a bug bit me. I really enjoyed the ticking time bomb, trying to stop attacks, the idea
Hmm.
of investigating afterwards. It just thrilled me right from the very beginning. I felt such a strong passion for it, and I really kind of never left after that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was, as I said, it was a complete accident, and that has been a very interesting life lesson in and of itself.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. So, as a I come from the numbers version of data and analysts world. Um, so so when you're talking about reading the reports and reading the intelligence reports, one of the selfish questions I wanted to ask you is just a- how does analysis look in the intelligence community, versus what I do, which is get a spreadsheet or a whole bunch of images and run, computer programs, things like that. What does analysis look like for an intelligence scenario?
Yeah, I think, there's two aspects of intelligence analysis that I mean, there's a lot of aspects that make it unique, but the two that really stand out for me are, first and foremost, most of the issues that are topics of the intelligence community, where you need your national security and your government to have intelligence. So, clandestinely collected information that someone is trying to keep a secret from us.
Hmm.
Those topics really reveal activity that is statistically anomalous. It's statistically insignificant. The
Hmm.
number of terrorists in the world are zero.
Yeah.
They're 0.00000, down. And so you are not, you're looking at the abnormal activity of the world, not the standard, not the traditional. And I think it's really important to remember that, because so often, when you're providing intelligence analysis, you're supposed to be providing truth as you know it, as you understand it, as in the way you can explain it, with all of its flaws and gaps and everything else, and not provide what it is the policymaker is asking for. You can't
Hmm.
provide them with the answer they want. You have to provide them with the truth that is. And some of that is helping them understand that we are not dealing with statistically significant data.
Hmm.
You are really working on the margins of human behavior, and to begin with. And then when you add the second complexity, of course, is that intelligence information is so fragmented and taken out of context when you get it. that you can't you have to presume it's as much fiction as it is fact. I mean, all intelligence information includes lies as
Yeah,
well as truths, and to be able to use that information to fill a knowledge gap without overusing it, without relying on it in a way that you are weighting its um, actuality and skewing the entire reality of what's going on. It's a really delicate balance. So I think I haven't worked a lot with data the way you have. Obviously, we do have bulk data and intelligence as well in certain ways. But even then, it's data that still is about statistically anomalous behavior.
sure.
So it's just one of those things you have to always keep in your mind. And the thing policymakers and other consumers of intelligence analysis find so frustrating is that analysts will never be categorical in
Hmm.
their assessments. It's always, well, this is likely, at best, this is likely, or this is a maybe this and a
Yeah,
might be that. They hate it. Well, give us a percentage, and like, I can give you a
yeah,
percentage, but it's quite meaningless.
yeah,
So, it's just enormously frustrating for everyone who's on the consumer side. But if you're an analyst and you're steeped in this kind of information, you recognize how dangerous it is to allow it to, lead you too far into certainty. You really have to remain curious about the flaws and examine the assumptions and, just recognize that you're dealing with extremely fragmented information.
yeah. It's interesting to me to draw the the analogies or the threads between the kind of bulk data analysis and what you are describing, because it sounds like it's a lot of looking for outliers but then trying to fill in the context around what might be influencing those outliers and where they might be coming
Hmm.
from. And for what it's worth, when I build models to do AI prediction of whatever, or anybody else here does, if we get something that's 100% confident about anything, that's the one model we know for sure is definitely wrong.
Yes.
And
Yeah. If you could build that humility in AI, that would be great because people don't always have it.
oh, it's wild because in my experience, anytime that you're building an AI or a computer program to do something that humans have been doing, um, the first thing that happens is that the humans know that they're not 100% correct. But then the moment you show them the computer results, we can all sit around a table and look at the PowerPoint slides and talk about how it's wrong.
Hmm.
And so for some reason, when we've accepted the human frailty of their analysis or classification or what it is, whatever it is, it's very difficult for us to accept then the computer to have even a little bit of wiggle room on that same front. So it's interesting to hear that it's the same sort of problem. You're presenting this analysis, and uh, you can never be 100%
Mm-mm.
certain
Yeah.
of anything.
No, it's very frustrating for everybody. It's, it's
Yeah.
not for everyone, and it's one of the reasons why I think, as we were talking about having larger families, and having 5 children, it's just always chaos, and there's the
Oh,
idea of control is an illusion, and so the more you are comfortable with uncertainty, I
yeah.
think the more capable you are in the world of analysis, particularly intelligence analysis or any kind of forecasting, because, or solving anything, because there's never certainty and you just got to
Yeah.
embrace it.
Has so you mentioned parenting. I mean, it happens all the time that one kid is going to come and say, so and so called me a name,
Yeah.
and you know that that wasn't the first incident in the situation. Um, have you ever had moments where you've recognized your intelligence analyst brain get kicked on when your kids are all telling truth from their perspective?
Oh, for sure.
Um, uh, I can only imagine what that might look like in your
Yeah.
house.
Well, I think it's probably the same thing for a law enforcement, a detective or an investigator of some sort. Every single witness is going to have a different story, even though they all witnessed the exact same event. They
Yeah,
all might have experienced the same event, but eh, completely do not believe that the other version of it is what they saw or did, or you know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
it's really very similar, and I think that's, as you point out, context is so important. In intelligence analysis, you really can't understand the anomalies unless you know the normal, and that's why you have to marry up the expertise of the topic, the subject of what you're analyzing, whether it's a region or a culture or a set of people,
mhm,
or in my case a terrorist organization. You really have to
yeah,
know what the norm is in order to understand what the anomalies are. And I think, as parents, we kind of know what the norm is with regard to how our children interact with each other and how children in general interact with each other. So it helps us pick out some of those, like, I don't think that's the sequence right there,
yeah,
like, kind of thinking you ate the cookies first and then your little brother got mad because there weren't any cookies.
yes,
So it is funny. I have, in fact, my first two books are about this entirely. They're both National Security Mom, 1 and 2, is entirely about understanding that, in so many ways, the way we govern, the way we secure our nation, how we interact as countries is really not that different from the way we interact and govern within our own, nuclear family, because, or whatever, small, large, maybe even a little bit beyond if you have like a multi-generational family, um, because it's still humans,
mhm,
right? A nation state is not that different than the parental figures, in a family. So I don't know. It makes it a lot more relatable, and I think it actually holds very true. And sometimes I wish that we would pursue our security and act as a government the way we would act as parents,
yeah,
or at least the way we say we would act as parents. Sometimes I know we fail as well. So, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, people are not nearly as complicated as they think they are.
Yes. Or as evolved either. We're
Yes.
still pretty predictable, basic human beings. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when, so thinking about this book that you have coming out soon,
Mhm.
and just thinking about that concept of people not being as evolved as they think they are, how did that play into the characters that you wrote? I mean, I think that the time, the hubris of looking at us human beings now and thinking that we're somehow more evolved than 100 years back, 1,000 years back, 2,000 years back is just silly. But how did that play into how you were writing the characters? I'm assuming that, given what you've said, that they're intelligent regardless of time period. But
Right.
yeah, how did that play into it?
Yeah, no, it's thank you for asking. It's actually a major theme and motivator for writing it, because I take a modern day counterintelligence officer from the CIA, and she accidentally gets transported back into the Revolutionary War period, where she bumps into one of the Culper spy ring members. So that's one of the best known spy rings that worked for General George Washington during the Revolutionary War. And as you said, she's in 2025 going back in time, and by the time we get through the whole like shock of what's happening, she realizes pretty quickly, while working alongside with another spy from the Culper spy ring, that the tradecraft is pretty much the same. It hasn't really changed. And people don't change. People's motivations for how they behave, whether it's ambition or greed or whatever it might be, that doesn't really change either. And so in terms of intelligence tradecraft, though, especially when you're talking about human intelligence, actual human spies, it's still trying to figure out, is this person telling the truth? Or are they telling me a little bit of truth? Why are they telling me this? Can I trust what they're telling me? What do I do with what they're telling me? What if what I do with it then turns around and reveals that I knew it ahead of time, and then I get caught? It's the same cycle of questioning and uncertainty that you face in modern times. And in terms of the techniques, again, with human intelligence, while obviously in 1700s they didn't have signals intelligence in the same way we have it today, you're still trying to understand or learn ahead of time what your adversary is going to do. And the only way you can, with any confidence, do that is by getting inside the head of your adversary. And no one has really figured out how to do that yet. Yeah. So we're still, all intelligence methods are proxies for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And honestly, even if you did get inside your adversary's head, what your adversary does might not necessarily be what they end up thinking. So, you can kind of spiral this on forever. But so really, I think, my modern day spy realizes how connected she is to the origins of American intelligence. And I think that part of that is a lot of fun to explore. But also to be able to go back in time. And what I was really fascinated with was, why some people sided with the Continental Army, some people sided with the Patriots, and other people stayed loyal to the Crown, and how hard that division must have been within families, in neighborhoods, and just really understanding the Revolutionary War as the first polarization in America, and maybe even the first Civil War, if you want to call it that. But just really explore. I thought at this time frame it might be good to understand how people can love each other and be in the same family and have such dissenting views about their governance and their government and their futures. And so I wanted to dig in on that a little bit too. So
no, that's
so not very different from today.
No, that's cool. That's cool. All right, I've got a couple other questions I wanted to ask you about some other stuff. So the first thing was, so you're familiar with ChatGPT and OpenAI. It was discovered. Oh, let's see. I've got the article up here that private conversations that you had with ChatGPT, if you clicked the share link, then that made it indexable by Google. And so then if I, am talking to ChatGPT as a proxy for talking to a therapist, or if I'm talking to it to help me write a resume, that then if somebody happens to put in the right cocktail of search terms, then it'll just show up in a normal Google search.
Hmm.
So I was just wondering what your thoughts about that would be, because obviously I mean, it's kind of a public information leak, but yeah, I was just curious as to what you thought about something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I probably approach this entire topic a little differently than maybe most people, in that I just think the whole concept of privacy is dead. I, it's kind of like certainty for me. Like this just doesn't exist. Privacy doesn't exist. Um, we just we don't live in a world anymore where it does, and it would be very difficult to function anymore with privacy because you would have to give up almost everything that rides on
Hmm.
the internet, which is I don't even know what doesn't anymore. I guess a couple things, but so I I don't I guess I'm always surprised that people are surprised when things like this happen.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's not just because I come from a world of intelligence where really, honestly, there's right now the only thing that is truly private is what you're thinking inside your head, um, and haven't communicated or conveyed in any way. And believe me, your body language conveys a lot more than you probably wish. So, um, there's no privacy. And yeah, I
Mm.
think I think all of these tools can attempt guardrails and things like that, and you can attempt to be aware and informed about how to use platforms safely, but there's no guarantee, even if even if you used everything, the way you're supposed to in order to protect your privacy, and you read through all of the things that, all the steps to do that, there are still adversarial people out there who are
Yeah.
going to try to break into it, and not necessarily because they care about, Gina Bennett or, anybody, any individual, but just to see if it's possible.
Yep.
Um, so I don't know. I think the reality is also true that if you go and talk to a physical therapist, you can't 100% for sure know that that person isn't telling their, wife or husband or
Oh yeah.
best friend, you would not believe what this person told me. So I don't know. I guess the concept of privacy for me is not really something that I think exists in the way people want it to exist. And I just assume any platform I use, I can check things and say no, I don't want those cookies or this or the other thing. But I am never ever surprised when I get your personal information might have been. I'm like, yeah, right. Moving on.
Yeah.
It's just only the 10,000th time this year. So I don't know. I know it may not be what people would want to hear, but I think people should be less um, just a little bit more mature about what they're doing because
Yeah.
their expectations, I think, are just unrealistic.
Yeah. I mean, from day one, when ChatGPT came online, it was my personal assumption that nothing you put into that little prompt window constituted private information in any real sense.
Yeah.
And then you look at the other organizations that are developing similar technology, and it's like, okay, well, their entire trade is based on moving information around, um, Google, Microsoft. So uh, the likelihood that any information you put into that little window is going to stay there forever.
Hmm.
Um, it, yeah, I think that's probably an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose I know that we all have, behaviors and histories and things about ourselves that we wish we could keep private. I understand. And I'm not saying that we just give up privacy altogether. I get that. But there's another side of the argument where I think, especially Americans, coming from kind of the puritanical, when you think about some of the origins of colonization in the United States, of pilgrims,
Mhm.
and people escaping different kinds of religions and then becoming very puritanical and this, hypocritical. A lot of people saying that they're one thing and then not at all living the principles of that religion, for example. I feel like it's a humbling experience, like the thing that happened at the Coldplay concert.
Mhm.
It's a humbling experience to realize, guess what? We're all going to find out that you're a normal human being and that you make mistakes, and that some of those mistakes you make are really pretty embarrassing. Yeah, we all kind of do that. We all
Yeah.
have that, and maybe that makes us understand each other or have empathy, a little bit more empathy for people, and not judge them, on the surface so much,
Yeah.
because nobody is without flaws. Nobody lives a life doing absolutely nothing embarrassing. If you do, then you must have the most incredibly boring life ever. Um, so I don't know. There's just part of me that just feels like the upside of this is perhaps the more we reveal how much we are alike in our flaws, the more maybe we can understand that there's reasons to get along and be tolerant of
Yeah.
each other. I always tell my children, I mean, I always told them when they were little, and I still say it, and they laugh now as they're adults. But if you have something inside, an emotion, a mistake you've made, something like that, it's better to let it out. I said these things are like,
Mhm.
I always told them, these things are like farts, right?
Yeah.
It's it's just more painful when you finally do let it out. Um, and it's more painful for everyone and more unpleasant for everyone else if you keep it inside. And then when it comes out, it's more unpleasant for everyone else. So it's, emotions, those bad feelings, those are like farts. You keep them in, the longer you keep them in, the more
Yeah.
painful they become for you and the more unpleasant they are for everyone else when they finally come out. So it's better to just let it all eke
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like that as a second half of social media philosophy, and that uh, I often will try to let people know, like, hey, nothing you if you're doing something and you don't want it on social media, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. But then on the flip side, as the receiver of information, there probably does need to be a general awareness. Hey, there's not another kind of person. Everybody's flawed, and you need to be willing to forgive and accept in ways you may not have been comfortable with before. So
Yeah.
no, I think that's really interesting, and helpful, especially in this, you know, just the latest in the saga of eroding privacy, as people might
Yeah.
think that it is. But really, from the moment everybody had a Facebook profile, nobody can claim any sort of privacy for sure.
Yeah.
Um, all right, and then the last thing I was going to ask you about was, with these AI tools, do you see a place for AI tools like this to be used in intelligence? And I guess what would be worrying to you about their use or exciting to you about their use?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think AI has a lot, has so many advantages and ways to contribute. So I'm not freaked out about AI being used in intelligence or national security or anything really. Um, it's the way we go about it, our conversations about it, I think. And honestly, I would love to see more and more transparency in with the from the providers of platforms and tools. So when it comes to the use of AI in intelligence analysis, intelligence collection, I think the obvious potential use of it is to help us be more effective with the limited time that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are only so many waking hours for a human being. And, for AI to be able to do a lot of that early culling through things, and digesting, bigger chunks of data and helping to pick out anomalies, that saves us some time. Can we rely on it 100%? No. But analysts don't rely on anything 100% anyway. So, we already build in that lack of confidence in our conclusions to begin with. So it's just a new layer. And then making that transparent. When we provide that information to a consumer, that consumer needs to know. We relied, we had, this is the body of reporting and information that we had to rely on with all the gaps involved and the assumptions we had to make. And oh, by the way, we used AI for X, Y, and Z. I'm a big believer in just making things transparent. Like, don't sell like this all came from my brain if it didn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you not knowing everything. Nobody expects you to be a genius at everything. Nobody can be. And so, okay, so you didn't draw that particular graphic. That's okay. Give AI the credit the same way you would give a photographer credit for taking the photograph. I don't think that makes you less of a person or less of an expert or less of a hard worker. It does. It makes you unethical if you deny it, and if you bury it and you don't make it transparent. I think that's where my biggest concerns are when people feel like they have to hide their use of AI, and then they're overselling or they're lying. They're basically, it's just completely unethical to hide it. And that that would concern me. That concerns me mainly because the one thing I would say about AI, I think, is it does have it, and I think we need to have this conversation. There's no way around it. The contributions of AI feed directly into two of humanity's worst traits: greed and laziness. So, laziness probably first, because if it can do everything quicker, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
It can do everything quicker. But then when you say, oh, it can do everything quicker, so then I can make more money because I can do more now because it's doing these layers faster. So my output can be bigger and I can make more money because my output is now bigger. Greed. You care less and less about accuracy, and you care less and less about ethicality. And that's where I worry. It's like AI has no intention. It's just a tool. But the human, it's all on the human, right? If you think, oh, well, I can just point to AI and say, well, it's all AI's fault. No.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of my blend is I think it's a lot like food and nutrition. Remembering when nutrition labeling really got a big boost. As a consumer, you need to know what you're consuming. And if 50% of it relied on an AI, or some combination of AI platforms, just let me know that before I consume this conclusion. Let me decide. I want the agency and the autonomy to decide whether or not I believe it. I want to decide whether or not I would prefer to decide whether I want fructose, corn fructose or cane sugar in my Coca-Cola. I want to be able to decide whether I want an organically made Twinkie substitute versus the actual Hostess Twinkie. But I can see, what I'm consuming in either case. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's certainly got to be a part of the adoption of AI tools, is that transparency of, hey, I got us a first draft. I only spent 15 minutes on it. I just, put it into chat, you can, here's the prompt that I used
Yeah.
to get where I went. And so much of getting good results, I mean, the tools are all just a mirror for what you put into it and what you ask. So much of getting good results all revolves around the human that's doing that and what they're asking for out of it.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I think that's good context. All right, there are so many more questions that I want to ask you, but I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate how much time you spent with me so far.
Yeah.
So we may have to do a part two at some point. But thank you again so much for being on the podcast. If people want to find either follow you to hear about, your speaking engagements or other things that you are thinking about, or the new book, what's the best place to do it? Is it LinkedIn,
Yeah,
or do you have
probably.
a website?
LinkedIn is, I don't have a Goodreads website yet. I will when the new book is out, but LinkedIn I think is the best place because I try to keep my link tree up to date where I've, been anything that I've published or podcasts or documentaries, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's usually the best place to find me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for
Sounds good.
asking. Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to talk more AI. I think it's just endlessly fascinating, conversation about where it can go, where it should go, where it probably will go. There's so much to talk about.